Social media stories are my favorite type of post. Maybe it's that they're a limited time post that only lasts for 24 hours. Maybe it's the vertical screen. What I like most about stories on Instagram is that people really connect to them. I'm Jennifer Van Alstyne. Welcome to my blog, The Social Academic, where I share tips for your online image in research and academia. I also interview cool faculty and graduate students like you. Did you listen to my chat with Andrew Paulson last week? This Vanderbilt University educational doctoral candidate is working to transform education across America. Today we're going to talk about stories on social media. And while stories were made popular by Snapchat, we're focusing on Instagram and Facebook stories. There are so many things you can do with stories to share your teaching and research with the world and really humanize the work we do. Let's talk about how. In this article, you'll learn what social media stories are and what platforms they're used on. You'll get a sneak peek at what stories on LinkedIn might look like and how they can help you. Also Twitter. I forgot to add that in. Discover 11 inspiring ways to use social media stories for your teaching or research life. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the blog so that you don't miss out on advice like this. Hit subscribe now. So, how do stories work on Instagram and Facebook? Social media stories were made popular by Snapchat, which called each post within a story a snap. We're talking 2013, so this form of social media post has been around for a while. Now the term stories has become more generic, referring to a limited time post, generally 24 hours, in vertical format that tends to be manual access. That means it's not directly in your home feed. And they're viewed by your audience in order, one at a time. Stories can be text, image, or video. There are even interactive options like polls and quizzes, and we'll get into this a little more in a bit. When you post a story, people who follow you or who come across your profile will have the opportunity to watch it, depending on your privacy settings, of course, and they can react to your story with a few emoji options, and they can direct message you in response to a story. In Facebook and Instagram stories are at the top of the application of your home feed. It's like above your home feed. And a lot of people watch them. Like a lot. Instagram has a cool 500 million daily active users who watch stories. And it's not just Instagram. According to TechCrunch, Facebook stories have 500 million daily active users too. Does that surprise you? Honestly, it surprised me when I was looking up the stats for this article. I asked my personal friends and family. Okay, I asked my Facebook friends, do you watch stories? Do you create stories? And actually, most of the people who responded said no. So if you don't watch stories, if you've never created them, that's okay. A lot of people, actually, most people are in the same boat. But stories are a great way to share information, ask a question, engage your audience, see what your friends are up to, and even have conversations. That's why higher education is using social media stories in so many ways. For instance, introducing faculty like you, tours of campus, and sharing events. So I knew social media stories were something I really needed to write about for academics like you. By the way, I don't use WhatsApp, which is another Facebook company, but it has more monthly active users than Instagram, but I hear that you can set your WhatsApp status each day and it disappears after 24 hours. Stories are coming soon to other social media platforms. One I find increasingly important for people like you is LinkedIn. And the other was just announced this week. Stories are coming soon to Twitter too. But let's start with LinkedIn. So now you know a lot of people use stories on Instagram and Facebook, as well as another limited time post, the WhatsApp status. Did you know that stories are headed to LinkedIn soon? I wrote about how important LinkedIn is for graduate students, faculty, and researchers like you, and gave you a bunch of tips for optimizing your LinkedIn profile for networking. Stories on LinkedIn will be a new way to create content that helps you connect with people in your field, as well as editors, publishers, conference and event organizers, collaborators, funders, the media, and the public. It's not that you can't connect with your colleagues and friends there. You totally can. But you're likely already in touch with those people on another social media platform if you use one. So I like to mention them last. This is not the first time that LinkedIn thought about stories. They launched Student Voices in 2018, which overlaid your post with your university's logo. Student Voices, quote, aim to help people at different universities impact and share their experiences. But not everyone is like this, especially people are concerned with the idea of stories as off the cuff or less professional. But the head of LinkedIn content products, Pete Davies, says that now more than ever, conversations are taking place on LinkedIn with a 25% increase each year. So more conversations are happening on LinkedIn all the time. He says that stories are great because they're, quote, a lightweight, fun way to share an update. And he compares social media stories to quick business interactions, like passing someone in the hall or running into them at the coffee shop. He said that, quote, sometimes we want a way to just make a connection, have a laugh with our colleagues, and move on. So stories are coming to LinkedIn soon, and if you ask me, that's a good thing. And part of that is because stories are optional. You access them manually, which means that the people who are watching choose to watch. I'll definitely be using stories on LinkedIn once they're available to share things like what I'm working on, advice for faculty and grad students, and to ask questions. I can't wait to see what options will be available. Okay, we're getting to the best part, inspirations for your social media stories. Before we dive in, be sure to subscribe to The Social Academic today. And before we get to that, we need to talk about Twitter. This is brand new news. What are fleets? And what do stories look like on Twitter? So for about a year, Twitter has been working on a new type of post called fleets. And like Instagram and Facebook, the story feature will be at the top of the app screen. Unlike other stories, fleets will last 24 hours and then disappear, but unlike tweets, they cannot be retweeted. Like other stories, emoji-based reactions will be a way to engage with fleets, and like Instagram, when you respond to a fleet with a message, it is received as a direct message or DM. In terms of what you can post, fleets are really similar to tweets, except that they disappear. You'll be able to share 280 characters, photos, GIFs, and video. Fleets are currently being tested in Brazil. I'll be sure to keep you updated once these stories posts become available on LinkedIn and Twitter. So, there are so many ways to engage your social media audience with stories. On the blog post, I do share a photo, and in it, there's a couple different types of examples. For instance, I share a tip-based story that includes text, a screenshot, and an arrow GIF that points out a particular section of that screenshot. This is one way that you can use social media stories. Another example shares a poll and it uses emojis that asks just a simple question if the viewer is having a good day. So you can use these types of story posts for something that's really simple, that's fun, and you can also ask a more specific question, and you can have text-based answers as well. So in the example, I did try to pick different stories that weren't just a traditional snapshot to give you an idea of how dynamic your stories can be. So if you're listening to this on YouTube or on Spotify, be sure to head to theacademicdesigner.com/blog to check it out so you can see the example. But I do want to say it doesn't mean that a simple snapshot or video is totally fine for your stories. There are really fun photo filters, there's new augmented reality face filters, and stickers. So whether you're creating your first story post or you're looking to engage your audience further, I want to share with you 11 ideas to inspire your posts. Remember, stories on Instagram and Facebook are vertical video or image, like in the panel that I show in my example. So that's something to keep in mind when you're taking photos or video. So here comes my first tip. Introduce yourself with video stories. If you've read my other articles about social media, introducing yourself tends to be my favorite tip, and stories are a great place to do it. Whether you connect with your scholarly network on social media or mostly your friends and family, introducing yourself on social media is a friendly way to say hi. Check out my introduction video highlight on Instagram at higheredpr. So you can do an introduction story with static images and text, live video, 15-second video clips. My top suggestion is to jump on video and start recording. Say hi, tell people your name, and let people know a little bit about you. Number 2, share a day in the life series. The easiest way to start creating stories is to share what your day is like. Set a goal like, I'll share 5 photos of my day. Start thinking about what your audience might like to see or might find interesting. In the past couple days, I've watched some pretty cool day in the life stories. I'd share them with you, but they're limited time, so I'm gonna share a post from each of them instead. First, my friend from grad school, Chandler Steckbeck, shared a story that included a photo of her voting in the U.S. primary election, a short video of the view from her office, a photo of the puzzle she's working on, and a cup of chamomile tea that looked really nice. An awesome butterfly researcher, Becky Friesen, shared videos of the monarchs at her research site in Mexico as her story last week. I actually watched it twice, and then I shared it with my fiance who loves butterflies. I told Becky how we went down to the National Butterfly Center down in Mission, Texas over the summer. I really connect with stories because it feels more like I'm talking with people and hearing directly from them. Tip number 3, inspire with your favorite quote. So an easy way to use stories when you don't have a photo, maybe you don't want to be on video, is quotes. Both Instagram and Facebook stories allow you to share a text-only story or a text-based story that you can add a GIF or a sticker to. Sharing a quote of the day or something that inspired you recently is a great way to start using stories. Number 4, ask me anything on stories. A popular way to engage your audience on social media is called Ask Me Anything. Using a question element, your audience can submit text-based questions for you to answer. I will say that this does not work for everyone. It may surprise your audience if you're randomly asking them to ask you questions. So the first time you do, let them know what it's all about. Say something like, ask me anything as a way for you to get to know me more here on social media. You can ask me anything from what's my favorite pizza to my thoughts about my research topic or area of specialization. You can also host an Ask Me Anything on a specific topic. For faculty and researchers, that tends to look like Ask Me Anything about neuroscience. You can respond to the questions you get by sharing the original question and posting your response. And you can respond with video, image, text, or even GIFs. When you share someone's response, they'll get a little notification that you answered their question. Number 5, messy desks, a pile of books, and sad office chairs. So there is no shortage of snapshots of academic life on social media. The best news is that people are starting to prefer the authenticity of real life. That means sharing your messy desk or office is something people can relate to, engage with, and comment upon. And if you want something really engaging, try sharing a tour of your office or workspace. For scientists, take your audience inside the lab. Number 6, ask for advice, help, or solidarity. Another great way to use stories to connect with your audience is when you need something from them, like advice, help, or solidarity. Share what's going on with you and let people know how they can help. Questions I've seen on social media stories include, how do you create a work-life balance in grad school? What interview questions should I prepare for? Have you ever been through this before? What do you do for self-care? Those are maybe a little heavier topics, but I've also seen things like, what book should I read next? And I've definitely asked about TV shows myself. There are lots of ways to connect with your audience on stories, whether you're asking for direct messages, question responses, poll or quiz responses, or just attention on a topic that you care about. Tip number 7, save your favorite stories to highlights. So on both Instagram and Facebook, you can save your favorite stories on your profile through highlights. Highlights are a series of story posts that you choose to make available to your audience for, well, as long as you choose. I mean, that means they stay on your profile beyond that limited time window of 24 hours. Let's say you introduced yourself recently and people liked it. You want to make that available to other people because not everyone caught it on that day. After all, we're busy. Not everyone is checking stories every single day. Highlights are a great way to make those stories last longer and potentially reach more people. You can also use highlights to keep permanent stories where you share a bit about your research, introduce a hobby, explain or educate people about a topic of interest, or even detail an upcoming talk or event. Number 8. Well, remind people about your talk or event. You can use social media stories to keep people updated about an upcoming talk or event. On Instagram, there is an actual reminder option that you can use in stories, but also just hopping on video or sharing a text story with the details is helpful. For events, people need to hear about it a number of times to remember it, and generally more to make a decision. So stories is a great way to get the word out there about your conference presentation or keynote address. Number 9, polls, quizzes, and sliders engage your audience. In both Instagram and Facebook stories, there are options to engage your audience with polls, quizzes, and sliders. Think about it this way. A poll is like asking a question with 2 options. It can be anything from "How's your day going?" to "Do you want to learn more?" A quiz can have up to 4 options, and while you can select a right answer, there doesn't actually have to be one, so you can use it to ask any question with even more options than a poll. Or you can use it as a traditional quiz to ask questions like, "What's my favorite movie?" and have people guess. Sliders are not available on Facebook stories, but on Instagram, a slider is like asking, "How much?" How excited or happy are you? How much do you agree with this? While these functions can be used on their own, they're most effective with engaging your audience within a string of other stories. For instance, this week on Instagram, I've been sharing daily advice on setting boundaries on social media. I used a quiz to ask people if they take their friends, family, and personal time into account when thinking about how much time and energy they spend on social media. Most people who watched the video story to that point responded. Using variation with your stories is a great way to keep your audience engaged. Number 10, and this one is for Instagram only. You can create a close friends group. Last year, Instagram rolled out a new feature, the ability to segment a portion of your audience into a close friends list. That means if your Instagram audience is mostly friends and family, and you also have a number of friends from your scholarly network there, you can create stories just for them, or vice versa. You could have a close friends list of just your family and friends. While the list is called Close Friends, you can use it to create a specific audience to share your stories just with them. These stories show up in the same place at the top of the app, but they have a contrasting color, so the audience you've shared it with knows this is a special story just for them. I do hope that you enjoyed these tips about social media stories. Be sure to hit that subscribe button now. There are so many features to test out. I'm excited for you to explore all the options. And whether you're new to social media or you're looking to engage your audience, I have the social media training for academics like you. Are you ready to take back your time and stop letting social media control you? Learn how to write for social media across platforms, build meaningful networking relationships, and share your teaching, research, and accomplishments online. Enroll in my course, Cross-Platform Social Media for Academics today, and start connecting with your audience. I'm so excited for you to check out the course. Be sure to reach out to me If you have any questions, you can find me on social media at higheredpr. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of The Social Academic. Be sure to check back later this month for my interview with Jacqueline Lord of the Society for Scholarly Publishing.